was a very hot summer. All the ponds and lakes had dried up. Two frogs went looking for a new place to live. They found a deep well. Let's jump in. There's a lot of water here. We can live very happily, said one frog. No, 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 I'm not coming, said the other. There is water here now, but if it dries up, we can never come out of it. I'm not coming.
Good day! This is Fausto Garcia Guerrero III, together with Ronel Cutad, reporting. Storytelling. What makes an effective storyteller? Well, we will find out the answer as we go on to our topic. Storytelling is a combination of the word story, which means narrative account of a real or imagined event or events, and telling, which means narrating in detail or making known. Therefore, it is a skill and just like any other skills. So, in order for this to be effective, enhancing and practice are needed. A study according to the National Storytelling Association of the United States of America, storytelling is the art of using language, vocalization, and or physical movement and gesture to reveal the elements and images of a story to a specific audience. Stories are used to share beliefs, wisdom, attitudes, experiences, values, and habits. Stories have been present in society for as long as mankind exists. We have here the 6 different purposes of stories. The first one is to entertain, the second one is to inform, the third one is to persuade, the fourth one is to instill moral values, the fifth one is transmit culture, and the last one is to inspire all the learners. Good stories have the following elements or tools for their messages to be more effectively conveyed to their audience and listeners, and it includes the setting that shows the listeners where the story is taking place, the characters that perform the actions and make the story happen, the plot that tells in chronological order what happens in the story, conflict that provides controversy in the story and make the story more interesting, and lastly, the theme that indicates where the story is all about and could include finding one's happiness, friendship, love, and many more. As stories have been perceived by many to have a great power to capture the attention of its audience, they have also become one of the most effective ways to present lessons and subject contents no matter what the subject is. Telling stories have been used in the teaching-learning process to make lessons come alive. Teachers are expected to become excellent storytellers. The world's literary culture is very rich. Teachers may use a variety of tools to give life to their everyday lessons, such as stories, poems, comic strips, editorials or features, song lyrics, and movie scripts. Part of being a storyteller requires these 3 preliminary steps. The first one is finding the correct story. There are lots of stories that teachers can work with. The idea is to find the right one. We must consider the following. The first one is the appropriateness of the topic. If you want your audience to learn not to lie, you must give them the story Pinocchio instead of Little Mermaid, so that the listeners could easily get what you want to point out, and at the same time, you are in line with your topic. The next one to consider is the length and complexity of the story. If you have a grade 6 listeners and need to consume only 30 minutes to tackle the story, you must not give them the whole story that only high school students could understand. You as a storyteller need to measure also their intellectual capacity before reading them the story. The last one for the first step is the time and availability materials available. The time must be scheduled. All of your listeners must be there listening to you. And also, we need to consider if it's lunch time. We must not let our listeners get hungry, for their focus on your storytelling will be lessened. And for the materials, if the storybook is not available or your PowerPoint where your images are located, you can't proceed to your storytelling because your listeners might not get what you are trying to say. And now, let's proceed to the next step, which is knowing your audience. This step is in direct relation with the first one. Your audience spells a lot difference in the story that you're going to present. And we must again consider things such as the age of our learners. We must find or tell a story that our listeners could easily understand. As well as the second one, which is the vocabulary ability of our learners. It is much better to use simple words, or if it is not understandable, we could explain the specific word to them. And lastly, it's the size of our audience.
Once you have chosen your story and have identified your audience, it is now time to pay a more in-depth attention to how you're going to tell your story. Here are some guidelines. Pre-reading. First, read and reread the story. Before you're going to tell your story to the audience, make sure read and reread your story again that you can familiarize and master of it. Maybe the audience can be interesting in your story and cannot be distracting to them. Second, analyze where the major interesting points in the story. You have to analyze where the major interesting point of the story. Like for an instance, there is a kissing part of the story that they can feel and relate to them. Third, decide where to stop or pause for effect. As a storyteller, like for an instance, there is a story behind of sadness. Then act like you are sad. If there's in a certain words that you can have to emphasize, you have to louder your voice. The last but not the least, identify the characters in the story. Before presenting the chosen story to the learners, teachers need to do some pre-reading activities. The National Capital Language Resource Center in Washington, DC discussed the reason why teachers need to use pre-reading activities. The first one, assess students the background knowledge of the topic and linguistic content of the text. The second one, give students the background knowledge necessary for comprehension of the text or activate the existing knowledge that the students possess. The third one, clarify any cultural information which may be necessary to comprehend the passage. The fourth one, make students aware of the type of the text they will be reading and purpose. The last but not the least, provide opportunities for group or collaborative work and for class discussion activities. There are some strategies for pre-reading. First, anticipation guides. According to Frank Smith 1978, allow the reader to make predictions about text that will be read by eliminating possibilities that are unlikely. Second, motive questions. Questions given prior to telling the story. Students will have to pay attention to answer the questions at the end of the story. Third, opinionaires or questionnaires are useful tools for helping readers examine their own values, attitudes, opinions, or related experience before they interact with book characters. Fourth, brainstorming. Students may examine and talk about the illustration on the cover page of the title of the book. Fifth, concept mapping or mind mapping, a type of brainstorming where you place the title or subject of the story as the main idea and gather the students' ideas around it. Last but not the least, KWL chart. This chart divided into three: what I know, what I want to know, and what I have learned. This will be the importance matter through the storyteller and most especially the students. Effective storytellers can make words come alive. They can make the audience and listeners see, hear, smell, and feel what the characters in the story are feeling. According to Barry Me Williams, there are essential delivery elements. The first one, sincerity and wholeheartedness. Storytellers should deliver the story honestly and earnestly. Credits must be given to the authors, illustrator, and publisher of the story. The second, enthusiasm. Storytellers should show genuine excitement in the story. This will make the listener feel how great a story is. Third, animation. Storytellers are animated beings. They put together gestures, body language, eye contact, facial expressions, and projection of the voice to deliver their story well. May Williams further added particular oral storytelling skills that storytellers must possess. First, emphasis. When telling a story, one should know when to stress a word, a phrase, or an entire dialogue for effect. Second, repetition. Sometimes words and lines must be repeated in order to get the desired feeling and emotions. Third, transition. This is the transfer from one part of the story to another. Necessary, inflection of the voice and pacing of the words make transitions very smooth. Fourth, pause. Storytellers stop for a while at any point in the story for effect or to check for understanding by asking questions. The last but not the least, proportion. This refers to the bulk of information presented in a part of the story. A storyteller should know what part of the story is being presented so that he or she can make necessary adjustment that would suit. Conclusion. Living in the 21st century makes an easier way for storytellers to impact more learnings to their audiences. They have now HD videos or images to show the students what is happening in the story. Unlike before, they are just conveying it through having an impact on their way of delivering the stories. Therefore, nowadays, digitals could really help the students to arouse more of their enthusiasm.